Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston is out today. It's a young adult novel about Padme and her loyal handmaidens that takes place about 4 years after the events of The Phantom Menace, exploring her transition from monarch to politician. But I mean, she was still an elected queen, so really it's more accurate to say it explores how she goes from serving her planet and her people to serving an entire galaxy. Today's review is going to be a little different. Of course, I'm still going to give you all of my thoughts like I always do, but then Molly's going to give her thoughts, and then I know that this book is very important to a lot of my friends in the fandom, so I invited a few of them to chime in real quick, and we're basically going to have like a big mega review so you can get a lot of different perspectives on this book, and we'll keep everything spoiler-free. Personally, I was really into this book. There are fun connections, new revelations, it's a fast and exciting read, and it's probably our best look into Padme and what makes her tick that we've ever been given. Except for a few episodes of the Clone Wars and some Forces of Destiny clips, most of Padme's stories are intertwined with Anakin, and that makes sense, but it's refreshing to just focus on Padme and her friends. The memory of Anakin is still vaguely there, but it's mostly about galactic politics. Now, one of the criticisms of the prequel trilogy is that it was too detail-oriented in its political plot lines, but I wouldn't say that's the case here. It's far more intriguing and honestly very relevant to real life. As Padme enters the Senate, the galactic media has a lot to say about her. They criticize her for her age, her supposed inexperience, and even her wardrobe. They try to discredit her at every turn, and it reminds me of how real-world media treats politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm not going to get super political in this review or anything, but I do think Johnston is showing a parallel between the Star Wars galaxy and our own. Padme draws far more scrutiny and criticism about things that have nothing to do with her actual policies than any other politician in the story. Speaking of other politicians, I was glad to see some well-known classic Star Wars relationships develop. We all know that Padme and Bail Organa and Mon Mothma are besties by the time of the Clone Wars, but that wasn't always the case. In fact, they're kind of at odds with each other in this book. It's way more interesting to have a little conflict between allies rather than just have them all be best friends from the start. Padme has to figure out who her true allies are for herself, and she does have a lot of options. Pretty much any character you can think of from the Clone Wars series that might make an appearance in this book does. Characters like Mina Bonteri, Rush Clovis, Anaconda Farr, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Palpatine, and more. I really want to praise Johnston for her ability to look at all of the relevant content in Padme and Naboo's history, both past and future, seeing what has changed between those time periods, and then she explores what that change would have looked like while it was happening. For example, as Queen in The Phantom Menace, she throws the Senate into chaos by casting a vote of no confidence against Chancellor Valorum. All that dust is settled by the time of Attack of the Clones, but there were consequences for those actions. Senators don't trust that Padme can be able to put aside Naboo's interests for the galaxy as a whole, and that makes perfect sense. Another great example comes from Battlefront 2. We see that Theed has a weaponized ion pulse in the event the city is ever invaded again. Johnston explores what it was actually like to install something like that on a pacifist planet. Who opposed the idea? Who didn't think it was drastic enough? Seeing that allies and friends were lost over a decision like this makes everything feel real and important. The book is largely about change. How do we handle the major transitions of our lives? How do we deal with the consequences of our youth? What do we do when the close friends we've had for years all of a sudden go off and do their own things? How do we make new friends and new allies? That's very appropriate for a young adult book because I think Padme's transition from queen to senator could very much be seen as a parallel for leaving high school and entering college, leaving the safety of your hometown and taking your first steps into a larger world. It's a good story, and I think it has a lot to offer Star Wars fans of all kinds. If you're interested in checking it out for yourself, consider picking it up for free on Audible. Just follow the link in the description or visit www.audibletrial.com/Star Wars Explained. The audiobook is out right now. It's narrated by Catherine Tabor, who voiced Padme in the Clone Wars, and the production value on all the Star Wars books is very high, with sound effects and music. It's like listening to a movie. Signing up for an Audible trial will get you a credit for one free book, and you can use it on Queen's Shadow, or just about any Star Wars book you can think of, or get any book you want. The point is, you get a free book, and you'll be supporting the channel when you do. But that's just how I felt about the book, so now I'm going to throw things over to Molly so she can give you her thoughts.
I'm thrilled to see Padme's character getting more and more attention these days. I really loved reading her parts in the Thrawn Alliance's book. Female Star Wars characters in general are starting to finally get the attention that they deserve. For me, Queen Shadow is about being a woman and just growing up, making difficult career choices, being criticized by media, and also having to deal with seeing your close friends that you've grown up with for so long less and less, because as you grow and as they grow, your lives just go into different paths. I especially related to the way that Padme has to deal with the media in this book. They try to say because she has this elaborate appearance and wears these big dresses and big hairstyles that she is naive and unfit to be a senator and only cares about herself, and that couldn't be further from the truth in her case especially. You get to see a lot of familiar characters in this book, and the handmaidens are amazing. They are so cool, and you get to see exactly how they are chosen to become handmaidens, the process, why each one has kind of a special case and job. There are a ton of really awesome Easter eggs in this book, and it's so cool to see these different reasonings behind why they had the queen dress up in such elaborate ways, and how often they ended up using the decoy method. As far as pacing goes, I feel like the book was a little bit slow at the start, but once you get a sense of where the story is going, it's really hard to put down. I think fans of Padme and the prequel era in general are really going to like this book.
Thanks, Molly. And finally, to wrap things up, I reached out to a handful of my friends and well-known Padme enthusiasts so that they could all chime in as well.
Queen Shadow is the book I've been waiting for since I was 9 years old. This book has absolutely everything. It has Padme, she goes from having to be Queen Amidala to Senator Amidala. It has Sabe, who was always my favorite of all of the handmaidens, and whose loyalty and love for her friend doesn't just go to death, it goes beyond that. And it features all of the handmaidens whose names and every details I could find about their lives. I memorized all of these as I was a kid because I wanted to be as cool and awesome and brave as these young women who not only cared so much about each other, but who were willing to give their lives for what they thought was right. Queen Shadow has politics because, hey, it's a Padme book. Who's surprised? It also has connections to broader parts of the saga, from Battlefront 2 to Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and that's not even all of them. It also features the beautiful dresses that Padme is so well known for, and it shows how these women not only know how to weaponize those dresses, but also use societal expectations against people and to their benefit. This is a book that celebrates the traditionally feminine and puts strong, capable women on display, and not the strong female character that Hollywood wants us to think about. I honestly can't recommend Queen Shadow enough. My expectations for this book were impossibly high because I've been waiting for it since I was 9 years old. However, E.K. Johnston not only met those expectations, she exceeded them, and I really hope that Lucasfilm will give us not only a prequel to this book, but also a sequel. I think prequel fans are going to adore this book. It made me stupidly happy, and I can never watch the prequels the same way again. Queen Shadow, amazing. You absolutely have to read it.
Queen Shadow is the Star Wars book that I have, no joke, been waiting for my entire life. Obviously, as a Padme fan, I am super excited to finally see a novel that's all about Padme, and not just about Padme as one half of the Anakin-Padme relationship, but her on her own, trying to figure out who she is as she transitions from this grand stately queen that we see her as in Phantom Menace to the savvy politician that we see her as 10 years later. But more importantly, this book is, at its heart, a celebration of communities of women and the deep love and friendship that they have for each other, the way that you see depicted with Padme and her handmaidens. And that is alone the reason why it's worth a read, because there is not a single book in Star Wars that I can think of that really goes to this level of being so much about women and celebrating women. Usually you see it'll be a story with 2 or 3 women and a cast of men, and this is almost the exact opposite. And it is so much about friendships and the deep love that these women have for each other and for Padme, especially when it comes to the Padme-Sabe relationship, which really gets fleshed out to the depth that it truly deserves. And for that reason alone, this book is absolutely my favorite Star Wars book of all time now, and will probably be that way for a long time to come. So definitely check it out. It is, I think, a badly needed breath of fresh air in the Star Wars canon, and it is so beautifully written and written with so much care by E.K. Johnston, and it's definitely one to add to your to-read list.
So there you go, one big mega review for Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and thank you to everyone who participated. I put links to all of their Twitter profiles and podcasts and websites in the description, so please go check them out or give them a follow if you haven't already. And remember, you can grab Queen's Shadow for free if you sign up for a trial on audible.com. Also, Molly did a fun video for her channel where she recreated the makeup from the book's cover, and I'll link to that video in the cards, but that's it from me. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.